Welcome back to the shop. This week we're going to be talking group rides. I'm going to be sharing with you my perspective on how you plan those group rides, the different styles of group rides, how you accommodate riders of varying skill levels, and how to lead those rides from, again, my perspective. But before we get into that, I want to give you all just a quick update on the Colorado BDR video that I'm putting together. I am still working on it. It's a bit of a challenge. I lost the first version of the first edit that I had, so I had to start over. But I am back through that and about 20% into it, so that should give you guys an idea of exactly how long it's going to take before that video is ready to share with you guys. Hang tight, I'm really trying to make that one special, doing a lot in terms of making sure that the story is told clearly throughout that, so I'm really hoping that you guys will like it once it's released, but it is going to take some time. Next, I want to take a moment and just thank all of you that have been watching, those of you that have already subscribed. Thank you so much. We're approaching 1,000 subscribers, which is a huge milestone for us. Obviously, we've still got a ways to go, so if you haven't already, please be sure to click that subscribe button and the bell notification so that you get notified whenever we upload new videos. Now, let's get started with group rides. Let me start by saying that if any of you have not either attended or participated in or led a group ride, I would highly recommend it. I personally enjoy riding solo too. However, group rides offer a different dynamic and a camaraderie that you just can't get when you're out riding by yourself. So if you haven't participated in one or you haven't found one, I recommend going out to, forums or Meetup or any other site where group rides get organized. If there aren't any organized rides in your area and you're compelled to do so, I'd highly recommend starting to post some of those. It takes time, but people do participate, and it becomes a very good group that you get to ride with on a consistent basis. However, if you haven't before led a group ride, stay tuned in this video because I've got a few tips and tricks that I've learned over the years from leading a variety of group rides that I think will be helpful to those of you that might be interested in doing so. So to begin talking about group riding, I'm going to establish three main categories that I see that group rides fall into. The first is what I will call a day ride, and this is basically a loop. You're trying to establish a central point where people can come together, participate in the ride, but then still only commit a half or a full day to the ride and be back home at a reasonable hour. The thing to keep in mind here is that people have varying commitments and obligations that they may need to make it home to, whether that's family or work. So you really have to make compromises here to try and accommodate, again, a wide variety of different scenarios, which will attract a broader audience. So what I would recommend is look in the geographic area that you're planning the ride, find a central point, establish a loop somewhere between 150 to 300 miles maximum if you're doing ADV style riding. Bear in mind that when you're doing a group ride, people are going to want to stop along the way and converse with one another. That's part of what makes a group ride what it is. So when you think about the mileage, you're going to have a very difficult time if you get a turnout of 10, 15 or more people doing 300 miles in a day. Whereas if you have a small group of two and the pace is very similar, you might be able to accomplish that kind of mileage. This also varies depending on the terrain. The more difficult the terrain, the more I would recommend shortening the mileage. If you do this, it'll help keep it balanced. And again, the primary advantage to this style of riding is that you're going to attract more people. They can come out. They don't have to commit a full day. They might cut out somewhere along the route, but you'll get together and you'll start to meet people. As you do this over and over again, what you'll find is you start riding with these people more frequently. As you ride with them more frequently, then obviously it's easier for them to plan ahead and commit to a larger ride with you, which will get into the other two types of rides. Now, with day rides out of the way, the next ride is what I will call a base camp ride. I've participated in these and they work really well when you're trying to accommodate, again, a wide range of riders and motorcycles. One of the key things to consider when you're talking about especially ADV motorcycle rides is that you're going to get everything from a 250 single cylinder all the way up to 1,000 and up cc big bikes. So trying to plan a route and trying to plan a ride that can accommodate an enjoyable experience for both ends of that spectrum can be a bit challenging. Then when you add into the fact that you're going to have some more advanced riders that show up and some more beginner riders that show up, you've also got to accommodate both of those as well. This is where I feel that the base camp ride, or what I'm calling the base camp ride, is an ideal situation. Essentially, when I say a base camp ride, what I mean is that you establish a single location, usually a campsite of some kind, and you plan an overnight in this area, maybe even 2 nights overnight. So this would be like a weekend trip that people plan ahead. They come out on a Friday night, they set up camp, but there's no riding that necessarily has to take place on Friday. Instead, they can just show up. It gives everybody a chance to meet one another, enjoy a campsite, and then the big rides would be on the Saturday. What you would do from here is you'd start to plan routes that branch out and loop back to the campsite that you're staying at. And you can plan different routes for different skill levels or different size bikes depending on your geographic location and the surrounding terrain. So for example, if you have a lot of smaller bike or bikes that are more of an enduro style bike, you can plan a route specific to that style of bike, and a smaller subset of the overall group can branch out and go on that ride together, and then plan a more toury route maybe for the bigger bikes and let them group up and travel on those routes. The advantage to this is that obviously it helps to start closing that gap between the bike size, the rider skill levels, so on and so forth. But then what happens is everybody loops back to the campsite at the end of the day, so there's still that sense of camaraderie, even if the groups weren't together. So that's a really, really good format. I think it works really well. I've participated in a few of these. It was one of the first types of group rides that I did in the ADV world, and it really worked out well. Then what you can do is you can plan optional rides for the following Sunday. So for those that might need to get back early, they can cut out Saturday evening after the riding is over. For those that have more time, they can stay overnight again on Saturday. They can either leave Sunday morning, or you can plan a second day's worth of routes for anybody that does have the time and wants to stay and get more riding in. So I think this is a really good format. I think it works really well, especially again when you have a large gap between the types of motorcycles and the skill set of the riders that are participating in the ride. So this is one that I'd highly recommend, again, if you do have that broad audience that you're trying to pull in with a variety of types of motorcycles and skill levels. The last form of riding that I'm going to talk about is a group ride on a multi-day trip. And in my opinion, this is the most difficult one to organize. Whenever you try to plan a multi-day trip with motorcycles, especially ADV motorcycles, you have to take into consideration whether or not people want to camp, whether or not they want to take a hotel. Can you find hotels and camping? Can you accommodate both of those? It doesn't sound like a lot, but everybody packs differently when it comes to camping. Some people pack really light, and so they will get set up and tore down really quickly. Others might enjoy their coffee in the morning, so they bring with them a burner and they want to get up in the morning and they want to have their coffee, and so it takes a little bit more time for them to set up and then pack everything up. And so again, you have to take this into consideration and balance that. The other challenge that comes with a multi-day ride is obviously skill level. It's very difficult on a multi-day ride to accommodate a very broad spectrum of skill levels, simply because you are trying to make it to pre-planned destinations for accommodations. What this means is that if you have a large gap in the skill level between riders, the overall group will have to slow down. I'll touch on this more in just a moment when I talk about leading group rides, but you can only accommodate the speed that the whole group together can travel at. So if there's one rider that's extremely more experienced than the other riders, he can't just blast out in front. The guy that's maybe just getting started, he can't run a pace that's beyond his comfort zone. Otherwise, there's going to be risks involved with that. So again, it's a balance, and it's really difficult to do, especially on multi-day rides, which is why I previously recommended the base camp setup for that large discrepancy in terms of bike size or skill level. The bike size also comes into play on multi-day rides because you have to accommodate the range of the lowest range motorcycle in the group. Again, going back to the concept where you have something like this with a over 200-mile range usually on the tank, you might have another bike in the group that only has a 160-mile range. So you have to work to the lowest common denominator, plan your fuel stops along the way according to the lowest range motorcycle in the group. And this again can subsequently have a negative effect when you're talking about making certain mileage distances. Another thing is, like I talked about earlier, a lot of what comes with group riding is the camaraderie. you do lose the opportunity to make frequent stops along the way on a multi-day ride because obviously, again, you're trying to cover more ground and get to a destination. However, on the flip side of that, if the group is closely aligned and the skill sets are relatively the same, you can get to the destination at a reasonable time, and you do have opportunities to do dinner and you do breakfast in the morning. Things like this do offer that camaraderie just like the other types of rides. The multi-day rides do obviously offer some of the most exciting shared experiences you can have amongst a group. When you travel large distances and you make it to destinations, it's just a shared memory and a shared experience that is hard to mimic even in those other scenarios that I previously described. I think personally the key thing that I would recommend is if you're going to do a group multi-day ride, don't go with a group larger than 4 people. First and foremost, you want to try and travel with an even number of people. Why? Because accommodations usually work that way. If you're going to do a hotel, you might be splitting rooms, restaurants, seating, all these types of things. They just tend to work better if you're doing even numbered groups and not odd numbers. That doesn't mean that you can't do odd numbers, and certainly if you're camping, there's far more flexibility because you don't have to do shared campsites. You can do individual campsites. They're relatively cheap. But again, it is something to consider if you're planning a multi-day ride. Is I would not personally recommend more than 4, and I would also personally recommend traveling in even numbers. The other thing that this does for you is if there is a problem, you have the option to pair up. Meaning, if there is a mechanical issue, if there is a medical issue, anything of this nature, you will have 2 people that can stay together and also 2 people that can travel. If you are traveling in very remote areas, the thing you have to keep in mind is that, again, if there is a mechanical issue and you split the group, 2 people go to get assistance and 2 people stay. The 2 people that stay still have options if any of their situations change. They can ride up to another destination. The 2 that depart and go together, if there's a mechanical with a second motorcycle, then again you have a backup. If you're running 4 GPS units, each of them can have the track, and again, you've got a backup and redundancy there. So I would highly recommend that 4 seems to be about the magic number. 6 would be the absolute maximum that I would recommend for a multi-day group ride, simply because you're going to have a difficult time getting everybody together and ready to go in the morning, and subsequently at night checking into hotels or campsites, setting up camp, taking down camp. All these things will get more difficult as the group gets larger. So those are some general tips about the 3 different types of group riding. I've had some really good group rides. I've been really thankful for the ones that other people have led, and they've done a fantastic job doing so. I hope that the people that I've led have appreciated, my leading, and I hope that I've done a good job doing that when I've done it. But at the end of the day, they are a lot of fun. Now, I am also the rider, as you can see from my previous videos, that occasionally I do like to go out and go solo. There's different benefits to that, and I'll maybe do another video that compares group riding to solo riding. It's not for everyone. But again, in this context, the thing to keep in mind is you are going to have a good time. You're going to meet some really great people, and from my experience, the group always works towards finding a way to work through these challenges. So get out there, do a group ride if you haven't already. If there's none in your area and you're willing to take on these responsibilities, post one, organize one, get other people out, get them involved. It's a great way to share that experience together. So hopefully at least some of you found this video helpful or useful. And if you have, be sure to give it that great big thumbs up. And again, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button and share this on social media. Until next time, take care and ride safe, whether that's in a group or by yourself. Have fun out there.